My next guest is somebody that I have been wanting to interview since I started this podcast about 3.5 years ago. And it's finally happening. This guy's got a massive footprint in the veteran space. He's a former Army Ranger, a YouTuber now with millions of subscribers and who knows how many views. But look, this guy's putting out really good word. He cares a lot about the country. I even got him to dive into his background, which was like pulling teeth. You know what I'm talking about. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is my honor to present to you Mr. John Lovell to the Shawn Ryan Show. Please like and subscribe, comment to the YouTube channel, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. And those of you that have been watching for a while, you know there is a ton of raw, cut up reels for you to download for free. Download those, put them on your channel, monetize them, make money. Patreon, we love you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. John Lovell to the Shawn Ryan Show. Love you all. Cheers. John Lovell, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, man. Good to be here.
This has been a very long time coming. You know, we were going to collab back several years ago when I was doing tactics, and you were a lot heavier into tactics, I believe, and I don't know why that fell off, but you're here now, and I've been really excited to finally meet you in person, man. I love the content you pump out. I love excuse me for saying this, but I love the kind of turn that you made at the right point in time, talking about some of the issues in the country and getting loud about things. I don't think there's enough people doing that these days, and you're one of the few.
Well, it seems like we made the same turn around the same time. We talked about that last night at dinner, too, and it's like, I was happy doing my kind of gun-tastic, gun-fu thing in the world of tactics, and but man, the world's just, really careening towards some disastrous things, and I just felt this inner compulsion of like, I can't just, make mine and do my merry thing when so many crises are happening around me. I got a platform to steward, and I want to do it well, and I want to be a change agent for good. And so I just couldn't stop by and watch every value I had and everything I loved be destroyed. And so we made that change seemingly to me at like the same time, right?
Yes, we did. Almost the exact same time. You know, I feel like it is a responsibility that if you have a platform that's big enough to actually make an impact and hopefully lift the veil on some people, that it's your responsibility to do that. And I take it extremely seriously. I know you do too. And I've watched a lot of your stuff where you're interviewing different people. I saw one where you were at a golf course. This was several years ago. I believe it was a golf course. I think you were interviewing congressmen, or it's just good stuff, and it's things that people need to hear, and it's stuff that you don't hear on the mainstream, and it's just another perspective that is an important one. So it's good to have you here, John. We got a lot to talk about.
Let's do it, man.
But let me give you a quick introduction here. So, John Lovell, Christian missionary, Army Ranger from 2nd Battalion, 5 combat tours, and 4 in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, husband, married for 17 years?
We're in our 17th, yeah.
Father of 2 boys, author of the Warrior Poets Society, firearms trainer, speaker, founder of the Warrior Poets Society, and YouTuber.
Yeah, and I'm pretty into dad jokes. That's the big bio bullet point for me. Dad joke connoisseur, really love dad jokes.
You got one off the top of your head? Just your favorite?
Favorite, man. Well, I just did the lead-in. Now I can't stall out.
I put you on the spot.
Do you know why you don't see elephants hiding in trees?
No.
It's because they're so good at it.
Nice.
It's the dumber it is, the more I enjoy it.
Nice.
So there it is.
Nice. But, I am really excited to dig into your backstory. I wasn't messing around. We just did a little Instagram story, but I was saying that you are one of the top requested interviews that we get. A lot of people want to know your backstory. And I know it's like pulling teeth trying to get it out of you, but I will do it. But I just want to tell you, man, I'm really excited about this. And then on the back end, I'd love to discuss some current events.
Yeah, love to.
But just getting into it, little warm up here. I like talking to folks that are similar to yourself about school shootings and the Second Amendment and how do we fix this problem? The politicians just bat the Second Amendment back and forth time and time again. Nothing really happens. Nobody's really pumping money into the school safety. And what do you think the solution here is? We see red flag laws on the left. We see the right doesn't want to bend on that. And how do we fix this?
I think the moment we start protecting our kids the same way that we protect our Congress people and our politicians, all the school shootings are just going to disappear immediately. Even the lefty anti-gun politicians are protected by people with guns, which is extremely hypocritical. We should pause on that. But they're protected by people with guns, and yet our kids are protected with signs. That's it, really? This isn't a serious solution, and they know it. And so I think the moment you take it seriously of like, no, let's protect our kids with people with guns, just like our politicians are. And the moment you do that, it's just going to disappear. The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. That's it. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. How exactly would you do it? I mean, the politicians aren't going to do it. They're not going to release the funding. Some things that I've noticed are there are actually some grants available. And so one thing that I think that would help is there's all these companies popping up, and some of them actually have pretty cool products. I know there's one company, I think it's Fox 2 Sierra. They have the bulletproof whiteboard that you can lock it down in front of a door. There's the new, actually it's not new. We were using this a long time ago in various combat zones, the film that you put over the windows. Yeah. But there are actually grants for these things. And I think if the companies that are selling these things actually educated themselves on the grants and had a team to go into these schools and private schools and daycares and preschools and anything where there's kids, and not only educated the business entity on the actual product that they're selling, but also educated them on the grants, we would see a lot more school security coming into play.
Yeah, that's right.
And another thing that I see is all these parents, they don't want to teach their kids anything. They want the quick fix, and it's, hey, let's get a $15 an hour security guard in here because, anybody that gets paid $15 an hour is going to want to put their life on the line for your kid.
Right.
Right. And so do you want to expound on that at all, any of that stuff, or just?
It's pretty straightforward to me of like, hey, if you want to fund it, just take a little fraction of what we're spending on weird gender study ideology or drag shows, whatever craziness is going on, and you just pay a cop overtime to be able to come and just park your cop car outside the building and hang out. And guess what? Bad guys are going to find a different school.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. Now we can do locks and security windows and all that stuff, and that's all good. That's icing on the cake. But you put a cop car outside with an armed cop inside, and they're going to find a different place.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's it.
I'm with you.
It's that simple.
I'm with you. But, well, hey, everybody gets a gift. before the show actually starts.
Here you go. Awesome.
So we take, I don't know how many of these you listen to, maybe you haven't listened to any, but we take mental health extremely seriously here. And I want to get into some mental health stuff with you, especially with your transition back into civilian life. But part of keeping it sharp, part of keeping your mental health, part of keeping your mental health up is keeping your brain sharp and giving it the proper fuel. And so put some stuff in there for you from Laird Superfoods.
Awesome. I open now?
Open it up.
All right. I'm looking for one thing particular.
Well, those are the gummy bears. I know that's the only reason you came.
It is.
But,
it is. And now that I've got them, thanks for having me on, man. I'm gonna punch out now.
You're out.
This has been real. It's been a ride. Thanks, man.
But this is all stuff to promote brain health. So that's performance mushrooms. Functional mushrooms have a lot of benefits for your brain. Basically, it regenerates your brain. You can dump that into, there's some functional mushroom coffee in there and some functional mushroom with adaptogen creamer.
Yeah.
So if you like the sweet stuff, you want to put the creamer in there, but super good for your brain, clean ingredients. The performance mushrooms, all the ingredients are from the U.S. We try to source all the ingredients from the U.S., but main focus is the best and cleanest ingredients. And so that's what's in there.
Cool, man.
But cool.
Cool, man.
All right. Enough of the gifts. Let's move on. Let's get into it.
How tacky is it to eat my gummy bears while you talk?
Hit them up. There's only been one other person that's done that.
Who was it?
It was Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
And right after his first one, I told him I said, don't worry, you'll feel that kick in about 30 minutes. And I think he about puked. He thought they were cannabis gummies, but it's just candy.
Got it.
Well, John, the way I want to structure the interview is let's dive into, we're going to go through childhood, military career, business career, and then we'll get into some current event stuff and some stuff that we think is some of the biggest issues that are going on in the country today and address them and hopefully come up with some solutions on how to solve that stuff. But so where did you grow up?
I grew up in Georgia, kind of the suburbs of Atlanta. So neighborhoods, we had a lot of woods around us. So I had a real happy childhood, being able to just disappear into the woods for the entire day. You come in for a tick check, at the end. Hope you don't hit a poison ivy bush. You make forts and, swimming in the lake. And so kind of wild and free.
Brothers and sisters?
2 sisters. We had some neighbors as well. And we were kind of sequestered out in our own little private neighborhood. And so, but a lot of alone time, a lot of playing with neighborhood kids, but really in the woods doing stuff.
Close with your parents?
Kind of hit and miss, but pretty much. I've definitely got a relationship with them, and so, yeah.
What did your dad do growing up?
A businessman, and so he was a really good as a life coach, and so really preparing me for. He wanted to grow you up, get you tough, get you focused, get you disciplined. And so those were the elements my dad really, focused on. Mom, great nurturer. She's shuttling us to soccer practices and to and fro from school and just doing anything she can to be there.
What kind of stuff were you into? Sports? Anything like that?
Yeah, soccer. We're talking just when I'm a little guy, right?
Anytime.
Okay, well, I got hardcore into wrestling in high school years, but before that, it was soccer and just playing in the woods kind of stuff, or go-karts, or I was...
You had go-kart, did your parents put you in racing?
No, I just had one year, I got the sweetest Christmas present ever, like this go-kart with big donut tires on the back, and just... That was a great gift.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's one thing we want to try to get our kid into is go-kart race. You can start them at age 5.
Really?
I'm really excited about this.
You could, but should you start them
Yes,
at 8? Yeah.
absolutely.
You won me over. You won me over. I agree then.
Now we took him to a track, and he loved it. So I can't wait till he's 5. They put him in the racing suit, the helmet, and it's pretty neat.
That's cute.
But yeah. But so were you a troublemaker? A lot of guys that go into special operations were troublemakers when they were littler. I don't talk much about money or the economy, but let's face it, ignoring it doesn't help either. Because I believe the government screws up all the time. I think they let down veterans, ship jobs overseas, they help their rich friends make even more money. It is insane. Do you really think they care about helping us out with our money? I don't think so. That's one of the reasons why a lot of folks are stepping away from the government-run systems and starting to diversify their money into real assets like gold and silver. If you're concerned about your finances and the future of your finances like I am, there's a damn good play you can make. Check out Goldco. Goldco will hook you up with a free 2023 Gold IRA kit. This kit will teach you how to help safeguard your savings with real gold and silver. At the very least, it makes sense to get educated about your options. So get your free kit at goldco.com/Ryan or call 855-936-GOLD. Plus, for qualified orders, they'll send you up to $10,000 in free silver as a bonus while supplies last. Quit waiting around for politicians to rescue your finances. Help take control and handle your business yourself. So go ahead and check out goldco.com/Ryan or call 855-936-GOLD to get your free kit today. Just remember, performance may vary and always consult with a financial professional before making any investment decisions.
I was into trouble, but it's kind of like a little bit more innocent, a little bit more harmless, benign. As a teenager, I'll start getting into real trouble.
Really?
And so, I was a bad kid. I was definitely a troublemaker. But I played a smart enough game that my parents weren't really aware of it for quite a while.
A bad kid. So what were you doing?
I mean, chasing girls, drugs, nothing too hardcore. But vandalism and sneaking out. Got arrested a couple times.
What'd you get arrested for?
Vandalism. Stupid.
What were you vandalizing?
And this is all expunged. This is all gone. Because it was, teenage years. I was pre-18, and I didn't get like cuffed or anything, but it was there. They just release you to your parents immediately, and so sneaking out and just ripping down stop signs and breaking into like houses under construction and tearing stuff up and just being crazy kids wandering around high as kites, and so stupid.
Well, last night, I believe you had mentioned some type of a traumatic experience that happened maybe when you were 19.
Yeah, that was a pretty big pivotal point for me. Leading up to that, at 15, I got busted, just into some stuff that my dad particularly was real hard on. Mom was too, but Dad was ready to take action, and they punched me out to a boarding school, and so I got sent away at 15.
Oh, really?
So I was gone at 15, and I guess the idea is, well, a boarding school will fix him.
What was the issue at 15? What was the final straw?
My dad particularly looked at all the kids around. It's like, this is the biggest bunch of losers going nowhere I've ever seen. And so he wanted something. He saw, hey, this is a way to fix it. And so he kind of sent me to this boarding school. It was a real prestigious one. And so it was really good. I hated it. I didn't want to be there. And I set records at that school for how much I got in trouble. I was like in-house suspension every week. I was in trouble all the time.
No kidding.
Yeah, man.
What were you getting in trouble for?
Stupid stuff. A lot of skipping class. I just didn't want to go to class.
Where do you do if you skip class in a boarding school?
You would have in-house suspension, and so that was like they had it arranged where you would have 3 hours of mandatory study hall on like Friday night, and so basically you're in this kind of like cubicle, head down working. There's a mod in the center of the room so you can kind of see everything. So if you're looking around, you get in trouble, and you just got to read or do homework. And then Saturday morning you have another one, and then Saturday afternoon you have another 3 hour stint, and then I think Sunday after church, which you're required to go to as well. So they really fill up your whole weekend with that. Okay. And then guess what? If you really don't want to go to suspension, you just skip that, and then you get double suspension. And so, man, I got into some trouble.
What would you do when you skip? Where do you go in a boarding school?
Well, I had a car.
Okay.
So I'd get in my vehicle and I'd punch out and go do whatever. And so anyway, yeah, I was, yeah.
So do you live at the school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had alarms on the doors so you couldn't get out at night. You had RAs, and then you had adults that lived at the ends of the halls to kind of check in and make sure you weren't doing anything too stupid. So... but even then, I was, I wasn't all bad. I wasn't like, devil horns, horrible, kid rail. I was really just after having a really good time.
Yeah.
And I didn't care about school, and I didn't really get along with most of the people at school. I had a small circle of friends, and were all devoted to let's have the best time possible. And that's what we were really after. And so, yeah, I was a bit wild.
Did that bring a lot of resentment towards your parents that you were in a boarding school?
It was, I recognized that I was really at fault, and I think my parents felt like they were doing the best thing they could, and so and I'm close to my parents now. Of like I love my mom and dad, and so all water under the bridge. They were, certainly cost them a lot to send me there. And as part of my journey, I certainly didn't want to go there. I hated it. There were some elements I really liked, but generally speaking, I was there because I was forced to be.
Did you grow up with parents that had strong faith? I know you have extremely strong faith now, and you're pretty open about it. And did that develop later on in life, or was that from childhood?
So we were my parents were on their own journey as I was growing up. So sometimes we'd go to like an Episcopal church, and then we'd be like a Methodist church, and then we'd switch and be a Baptist church, and then a non-denominational church, and then kind of back off a little bit. And so we just shuttle around, and I felt like we were all of it, and so we were kind of none of it. So I did have some pieces of my background that were definitely of like under the shadow of the steeple, but none of that really stuck. I played the game some, but that wasn't important to me. And especially when I moved out at 15, I was just kind of done with all the religious stuff. I didn't really care. And so my parents wanted to raise me more in a faith, and I would catch, my dad reading the Bible every once in a while, mom in it more. But anyway, and we'd pray before meals, and, they want to hold you to those values, but none of that was really taken very seriously for me. It's kind of check the block nominal Christianity, and I punched out at 15 for sure.
Yeah. Well, what happened at 19?
I ended up going into college. I majored in fraternity. I just went wild. That means I didn't have a major. I just went nuts. I'm the kid that's like drunk on a Tuesday morning. And you're like, why? I'm like, I don't know.
Why not?
I don't know. So I don't remember a whole lot of that year of college, but somewhere in that year, I'm just kind of like, I don't really want to be here. I want to do something else. And however the thought came across my brain, and for a whole bunch of reasons that seemed really important at the time, but in retrospect, it's kind of like it's hard to even name them, like patriotism or do something high speed, Army, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to go special operations, and I had pushed myself really hard in wrestling. In high school, where I'm living it up and being, after party and whatever, I'm also a wrestler, and I'm a good wrestler. I'm the school's wrestler, especially at boarding school. So I'm setting records, and I'm known for wrestling. I'm very good.
Really?
I was good. So I knew about pushing myself, and I knew I can push myself to death. I can push myself far past where everyone will give up. I realized I had heart, and I could just endure horrible misery and suck. Especially my sophomore year, I was weighing about 120 by the end of my sophomore year, and I wrestled 103. So I was cutting 17 pounds a week. By the end of it, hurt bad.
Yeah.
Worst I did was 8 pounds in a day. That was murder. That was awful. And the discipline and the drive it took just to cut weight, much less to go out as this just feeling crappy, emaciated wrestler and going out and fighting that way for 6 minutes. It was tough. It was tough, but that's what I really cared about, wrestling. And it was on the back of that, I guess I wanted some challenge. I wanted some fight. I wanted some drive. And whereas in wrestling, I could party it up and I had something for my masculine spirit to contend with. When I got to college, it was kind of like I was just floating. I was just adrift, having a good time, but I didn't have a mission. And so special operations, just kind of, I'm going to go do that.
Well, how did that even come on your radar?
I do not know.
You didn't grow up like infatuated with military, watching the movies, old Vietnam stuff. None of that. It just hit you.
Just hit me. I thought I could do it, and I decided I wanted to do it, and then that became the mission. That became what I wanted to do. And so I dropped out of school, and I informed my parents and everyone else that I'm going to go into the military, and I'm going to do something special operations-y. And then I started training myself for it. I was initially going to go Navy SEAL.
Really?
Yeah, y'all had all the good PR. You had all the movies, all the books, and I thought I had the hair for it, and so.
You do have the hair for it, John.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda. And so I started doing like cold water training of like, I was torturing myself of like just ice cold everything and hold my breath underwater and doing laps all the time and running and doing all the stuff. And in training myself for this, I grew to hate cold water so much. I'm like, can I do the same stuff without all the cold water? And so I discovered what an Army Ranger was. And I'm like, oh yeah, all the SEAL with none of the water. And so I jumped tracks. Now, the irony is I made it through all the Ranger stuff, made it to Ranger Battalion, and went hypothermic my first week in from cold water.
Really?
So that's the funny joke in it all of I didn't escape the cold water after all. But
what year is this that you're gaining interest in the military in special operations?
2000.
2000, so right before 9/11.
Right.
Were you in before 9/11?
I was in jump school. Or I was in airborne hold, so I was about to go in airborne school when the towers fell.
Interesting.
So we weren't at war. But once I got through, your basic AIT, your airborne school, which was a joke, and then RIP, which wasn't a joke, Ranger Indoctrination Program. Now it's called RASP, Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. By the way, the worst departure from the coolest acronym, RIP. That's a cool acronym, bro. And Army went RASP, which is a sucky one. So I went through RIP. That was not funny. Like basic training, AIT, that kind of stuff. That wasn't very hard for me. I mean, it was challenging. It had some hard elements, but by and large, I thought a lot of it was kind of funny. I got the game and I could play it. It didn't really bother me much. And I'd really done I'd done hard work to train. And so I'm annihilating PT tests and, because my wrestling background, I choked out a drill sergeant when we did combatives day. Like that was a fun thing, and I'm just excelling, throughout those things. I got through RIP and stuff.
Well, let's rewind
and
a little bit.
RIP wasn't fun at all, but
let's rewind just a little bit. So, how many years of college did you do?
I did one.
1 year of college?
Yeah, 1 year at college. I think I did a summer school in there. Later I'd go back after I got out of the military and complete a degree and do all that. But
where I'm going is what did your parents think when you told them, hey, I'm done with this, done with school, I'm going to join the military?
Nobody who was close to me was really a fan of this. Nobody seemed to be a big fan of this. When my parents saw that I could not be dissuaded, my dad would be, I think, one of the first to kind of warm up toward it. But I don't recall him being really on board. We did make a bet that if I made it, he'd buy me a motorcycle. And so I still got that Harley Davidson. I won in a bet.
Do you really?
Yeah, I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
what kind of Harley?
It's a Sportster 1200, and it's all custom out and chrome. So anyway, it's a pretty
Still
cool
ride
bike.
it?
But no, I don't. Not much. A couple times a year just to take it out. But me and my dad, much later, we'd do a cross-country motorcycle trip, the two of us, riding side by side in the same lanes. I think we had like 15 different states. That was pretty cool. Kind of closed the loop on that, but jumping way ahead.
So your parents aren't for you going in the military. You get in, you go to boot camp. What was your impression?
Not too hard. None of that was extremely difficult. Drill sergeants are yelling at you, and you're doing push-ups, and you're a bunch of wide-eyed privates, and it wasn't particularly scary for me, and it wasn't particularly difficult. I'd moved out of the house a long time before, and I'd done hard things, and I thought a lot of it was very funny, which caused me to do a lot of push-ups. Drill sergeant gets up in your face, and he's trying to intimidate you, and I just try not to smile. And then I'd smile. And after a while, I got dropped for push-ups so much more than everyone else because I just couldn't help smiling. I would just, as soon as it would start, I'd just drop myself and do push-ups. So I got really good at push-ups. But that wasn't hard. What was ridiculously hard would be the big U-turn that happened in my life, that traumatic experience that you had alluded to. And this was before basic. So right as I'm transferring from civilian life to military life, you go into like this holding cell, 30th Adjutant Battalion, 30th AG. And there's where you're like staying in line to get your dog tags and haircuts, and you're getting your BDUs and duffel bags, and you're getting shots and whatnot. It's a pretty chill, calm time. You're just standing around waiting in line all day. That's it. There, which would be most people's easiest time in the military, was my hardest. And the reason why is I had been, I think, through just a divine reckoning. God would change my life in that moment. It happened around May 22nd, May 20th, May 22nd of 2001. Okay. It's one of the most important dates in my life because everything that was John Lovell died, and I was completely remade in a way that is inexplicable and impossible else to define the massive departure of I was one way and legit, I became completely different in the course of a couple days. And what happened is I had this dramatic conversion to Christian faith. It felt awful. It felt like I was being unmade. It felt like my heart was being broken and destroyed. And then through that, Jesus I felt like, in not in this, divine kind of voice, but I just knew in my knower that Jesus had called me to give him my life. And it wasn't as much a question of would I, it was more of a directive, you will. And I did. And so he crushed me and remade me. And somewhere through all that, I was converted to Christianity. It felt like death and birth at the same time. And I realized how kind of mystical and unsatisfying that would sound for a lot of folks, but I don't really understand what happened to me. I wasn't in church. I wasn't talking to a pastor. I wasn't reading a Bible. I wasn't, I didn't feel like this big void in my life. There certainly was one. I wasn't after God at all. And it's like he found me on the road and accosted me. That's what it felt like.
Can you be a little more descriptive? What were you doing at the exact moment when you got that first feeling?
It was kind of picture a water pot or a kettle warming up, and then it comes to a head of like that water's warming, and that's happening over the course of a few days. And I didn't let anyone know what was going on with me, but what it felt like is if you've ever had your heart broken, it felt like my heart was being broken. And then if you've ever had a tragedy befall you, something awful that just destroyed your heart, felt like that too. The problem is I had no tragedy and I had no heartbreak, but those were the feelings. Through it all, what was happening is I was receiving a miraculous conversion to Christianity where God was giving me a new heart. This is the only way I can describe it. And so once given that new heart, I was deeply sorry for all the horrible things I'd done throughout my life. I was repenting. I was confessing sin. I had offended God. I had not lived to him. And so, through that, he remade me, and I was converted to begin not only not resisting Jesus anymore, but I love Jesus, and that made every difference. And so I was truly converted. I became a different man, and I don't know how else to describe it.
Can you maybe describe when you realized, at what point did you realize what was happening?
So I remember I was going to call like someone on the phone. Maybe it was my girlfriend or maybe it was my family, but I found myself, I couldn't even call them because I felt like inside was so tumultuous. I would have just broke down and cried. And I remember not making that call, and I just broke. And I remember praying, and I don't remember what was in that prayer, but I had realized that I had just become a Christian. I was already loaded with enough kind of gospel facts from my upbringing. I'm like, Jesus loves you, and you've sinned, and you should confess your sin. And all the gospel facts. You're a sinner separated from God. Jesus, who is God, became a man, paid a penalty for you so that you should receive salvation and forgiveness of sins so that you might. And so I knew the gospel fact. I just didn't care. It just didn't stick. I hadn't been converted. I knew some facts, but I hadn't been converted. And then I got converted in his time.
How did that feel?
It was the worst and best moment of my life. Felt like death, felt like birth.
Have you stuck with it throughout the duration up until now?
Yes.
In your life?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So I've been not perfect. I mean, I suck. The more I try to be like Jesus, the more I realize I'm nothing like him. And so it's a horrible process of just being like, man, I still suck. But no, I've loved Jesus and followed him ever since. It was a permanent change. It was a permanent stick. Now that didn't mean I didn't run, lapse in and do stupid stuff and, then have to repent again. But the difference is I was actually sorry this time. I actually wanted to please Jesus. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. That was a new heart. That was a different change. And I was a different man. And so now today, it's impossible to understand my life without understanding that piece. So some people are like, I'm not religious and, the sky god and your myth, whatever, blah, blah. I get it. But you can't possibly understand the departure from who I was to who I became without that. Because literally all of my success, all victories, all of it happened as a result of that pivotal change that didn't come from me. It wasn't me.
Wow. Very, very interesting. So this happened at the very beginning of your Army career.
Yeah. And then basic wasn't very hard. And, at this point, I remember standing up after the first night of getting yelled at, and I could tell everybody was taking this wasn't bad for me. And I stood up, I'm like, hey guys, anybody want to pray afterwards? I'll be in the center. And so I started leading prayer groups, and I'm like, I didn't know jack about Bible. Not really. And people had these questions about Christianity versus other religions and I didn't know how to defend that either. And so Anyway, I just kind of jumped in, both feet. And I'm like, I guess I'm doing the Christian thing now. And I didn't really know much. So I grabbed a Bible from a local chapel. And I'm just like, all right, let me figure this out. And I started at Genesis 1 and I read all the way through to Revelation 22. I just read the whole Bible in fast. And when I was done, I flipped it over and I did it again and then again and again and again. And that's where I learned Bible, is through military, trainings and overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq. I'm like, I'm just reading it. And you know how we are. We're kicked off in these small elements. You don't have access to a chaplain most of the time when you're rolling in special operations units. It's too small, like every once in a while you go back to some fob to refit and then you see your chaplain, and that's cool, but they can't be where all these little groups kicked out. And so it was really just me and my Bible for a lot of times. But man, the Lord's grace was great because I grew in leaps and bounds.
I'll bet. Moving past boot camp or basic, where do you go from there? Do you go to Airborne or do you go to Rep?
You do Airborne to figure out that, you just kind of fall out of a plane. And, you're trying to steer a D-10 Charlie, which you can't do. You realize, the slip, which, it's not really doing jacks. And then you just learn how to do a controlled, disastrous fall. Airborne School was a bit of a joke. RIP wasn't a joke. That was hard. That was awful.
Were you nervous going into it?
Yeah, because you knew that it's kind of like brace for impact. And, if like you hold, out of my basic training class of, 70 dudes, every one of them was going Ranger because it was an infantry basic training. Everyone's going Ranger and everyone's all pumped up and they're standing up after lights out and they're singing the Ranger Creed or saying the Ranger Creed. And so everyone's super motivated. And you're seeing these guys that you're in basic with go through and the crowd keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think, that had been whittled down through RIP to be a smaller group. I think out of, all the basics, the guys I knew, I think 7 went to second bat with me. And after a year, I think I was the only one standing from my company. I think that's right. That was in my Bravo, in second bat or Bravo company. Yeah. So
let's walk through that entire process. So you show up to RIP. How many total are there?
I don't know.
100, 200?
Yeah, a couple hundred, I bet.
Couple hundred?
I bet.
What's the drop? You're the first Ranger we've had on.
Oh, well, all right, cool.
You're breaking the mold here.
Yeah, and so the hardest part isn't getting to Ranger Battalion, it's staying there. That every day is an audition for your own job to see if you get to keep it. You got to be good at everything. When I became a team leader, that was my opening brief when I had new privates. I'm like, all right, guys, it's very simple. I need you to be excellent at everything. That's the job. If you're hot wiring cars, you need to be excellent at that. If you're doing PT, excellent at it. Whatever, guns or land nav or radio, I need you to be excellent at everything, or you'll be fired. That's the job.
So anything less than perfection, you're done.
You say that, obviously you can't, that's not attainable. Mm-hmm. That's not realistic, but you shoot for the goal and you land it. You become good or great at just about everything that you can be. And so RIP was...
What's the attrition rate?
I don't know. I just don't know. Ranger School, which would come later, that's more known, I think we started with a few hundred and then that boiled down to, I think 60 or so out of a few hundred. And so that Ranger School was less, but it's...
So there's two... Let's just try to keep it in chronological order.
Sure.
So you show up to RIP, correct?
Yeah.
Let's just walk us through day one. What are you seeing?
So what RIP is it wants to see what you're made of. And so whereas you're doing some stuff of some land navigation and you're doing road marches and obstacle courses, and now we're going to learn knots. And so they have an excuse of what you're doing as if they're teaching you, but really they're just trying to mentally jack you up and make you quit. They're trying to find out whether you're worth investing in. So really it's just a haze fest where they're playing physical and mental games, all the silly games to just jack with people's minds and crush their bodies to see who's going to be standing. And so RIP was just that. It was just 4 weeks of mental, physical torture. Nothing is super intense as something like Hell Week, but maybe something a little bit more general of like buds. And I don't know buds, but it's like it's hard, but it's not like crazy hard.
Are you learning anything, or is it
Yeah,
strictly an assessment?
You're learning stuff, but I think in the back of like we're doing combatives and stuff. And so you are learning stuff. There's the excuse of we're learning the stuff, but really what's under the excuse is we're here to thin the herd. We're here so that we don't send Ranger Battalion a bunch of dudes that are going to wash out in 2 months. That's what it is. Like let's get rid of the chaff so that we can just have the wheat left. That's what RIP is.
Could you walk us through the entire process of RIP from day one to graduation?
Probably not.
Why not?
It's just too far in the past.
Okay.
I don't remember it.
Is it broken into phases?
Probably, but now it's even RASP, so I don't even know what they're doing now. I don't even know the length of time. But for me, when it was 4 weeks, and road marches, obstacle courses, you're going to do some shooting, you're going to do some land nav. And so you're always doing stuff, learning stuff. But how you're going about it is you guys screw everything up, push-ups right here. And like everything, little random PT suck sessions were inserted everywhere. And so there's the excuse, we're giving you training, but really it's just a haze fest.
What did you find the most challenging in RIP?
Probably the mental games. This always worked best on me, and means the worst, is when everyone was punished because of something you did or didn't or failed to do. That's where I had a couple breakdown points in Ranger School. Actually, one breakdown point in Ranger School, and it's where I was failing my Ranger buddy. I could not handle that well. Whereas you torture me, I'm good with it. Mm-hmm. But I let that dude down. I don't really remember doing that necessarily in RIP, but that right there is the hardest thing that I had to ever struggle with. My buddy was counting on me, and I failed him. And I've done that. I've failed someone in training before, and that sucks. That sucks. So with RIP, I just tried to gray man out as best I could, keep my head down, and make it through.
And sorry, just to backtrack one more time, where were you when 9/11 happened? You were in jump school, you said?
Airborne hold. So I was about to go in jump school, and then RIP would come after that. And so I think because the war was kicking off, we got an especially potent RIP class because you're about to deploy to war. They don't have a lot of time to fiddle with you. Mm-hmm. So it was that I remember it being particularly brutal. And I think Ranger instructor, the RIP instructors, their adrenaline's up because, hey, packing for war, you boys better be ready. Let's give you a test. So my assumption is that they were really pretty serious.
How did that affect your mindset when you saw those towers go down? Did you know I'm going to do exactly what I came here to do?
Yeah, I didn't really think I was going to do the war thing. I thought I was going to live out the Army commercial. Then I saw the towers fall, and then it got real. But it kind of hit me in phases of like, at first it's just surreal. And then you work out the effects, and you're all talking it out like you have any idea. But after a couple weeks, you knew you were going to war. And so it made what you were learning all the more important. I wasn't doing it because this is what we do. I'm like, I need to know this stuff. Things got real. I wasn't training just to pass. I was training because I wanted to be trained. I wanted to be lethal. I wanted to be hard to kill.
Did the fact, not the fact that the towers fell, but the fact that you knew you were going to war, I mean, did that excite you? Did that give you any fulfillment? The patriotism, any of that? I mean, you were young.
I was deeply angered by the almost 3,000 civilians that were murdered. Mm-hmm. I was very, very upset with that. And so there's part of me of like, let's go stack some bodies and let's make sure they're so busy playing defense, they never think about offense again against us. And so there was that. And so whether you wrap that up into, all right, patriotism or whatever, I didn't have a bloodlust. I didn't want to go kill people. My team leader, when I got in, he picked me out a line of privates, wide-eyed privates. We got to Ranger Battalion. We're standing in a line, and he's first down there, and he's looking at all our records and kind of the paperwork that accompanies you. And he selected me out of the line as like he thought I was going to be the one, and so he picked me, and I went up to him, but he ended up being quite a sadist, of like he had a bloodlust. He really, really he really wanted to kill people, and I thought it was kind of like, all right, that's the macho game and whatnot. And I knew enough about the military, or I was able to be discerning enough to perspective-wise back out of the pain and the suffering, and I just saw it as one big kind of, all right, this is the game. This is what's happening, and so I was able to kind of to do that a bit. But when I looked at him, I'm like, okay, all right, you're playing the macho guy card. You're the hardcore. You just want to, okay, right on. And over time, I'm like, no, I think he's, Wax is pretty heavy on the psychopath scale. I think he just wanted to kill people. And so that was my team leader. Now he found out quickly I was a Christian. Reasoned from there that I would be a conscientious objector, and where he wanted to raise a psychopathic, cold-blooded killer attack dog, sick 'em, he realized that wasn't going to be me, had buyer's remorse, and then tried for the next year to make my life a living hell, And especially, he wanted to undermine my faith. And so while I am collapsing in pools of my own sweat, he's nonchalantly, casually walking circles around me, poking holes in my worldview. So that was my first year in Ranger Battalion. Now, once you're in Ranger Battalion and you prove that, hey, I'm not going anywhere, I can be counted on, I can follow orders, I am no fool, I am tough, I am strong, I am worth investing in. If you prove yourself over a year in Ranger Battalion or so, they'll say, all right, we'll send you to Ranger School. Ranger School is a 60-ish day suck fest where you learn a lot about leadership and embracing the suck, intestinal fortitude, that kind of stuff. So it's just misery and leadership. And they teach a bunch of old, outdated Vietnam tactics, which do have some merit if you're, in jungles and stuff like that. And anyway, you make it through that. If you don't make it through that, you're fired. And so I made it through, just straight through, did well, went back, and that's where you can start really developing rank. That's where you're kind of fully welcome in as a brother. Now you don't just wear the scroll. The scroll is the unit patch, and that's what makes you a ranger. Then you get the tab, and that's kind of like now you're a fully initiated brother.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like you go from Padawan to master. So you could have a tab, you've been to Ranger School, and not a scroll. You're Ranger qualified, but you're not a ranger. You're not an Army Ranger. It's the unit that makes you a Ranger. That's what the deadly dude is. That is your job. You are among Rangers doing rangery things. You didn't just attend a school and got a tab. Anyway, the kind of full initiated Ranger is Ranger Scroll unit, Ranger tab. I proved myself for leadership. And then you can, you come back as a tab Spec 4, that's a specialist or a corporal. And so you occupy a more respected position in a fire team. And if you do really well there, you're going to become a fire team leader. And that'll be a sergeant, and I'd make it through that. And then if you do real well as a team leader, you become a squad leader. And that's what I'd tap out at squad leader.
Okay.
And then I'd punch out to go on and do other stuff.
So getting back to Ranger Battalion, I can't say a typical day because I'm sure you guys are on the road doing different things all the time, but how is the training broken up within Ranger Battalion? Do you guys have a cycle? Like for example, when I was in the SEAL teams, it was Pro Dev was your school time. That was about 6 months. Then you have your workup. That's 6 months. That's working with your platoon, going to all the different, dives, a diving block, a CQB block, a land land warfare block, a maritime block, a jump block. And then you go to, I can't even remember what they call it, but that's where you work with your counterparts that you're going to deploy with. Maybe you're going to do some training operations with a Ranger Battalion or I was an East Coast SEAL, so maybe you're working with some of the West Coast teams, ODAs, whatever. How is sustainment training in Ranger Battalion? How is it broken up? What's the cycle?
My first day at Ranger Battalion, they packed me for war. So
really,
that was very step one, packed for war, because we were gone immediately. I don't remember how long it was, but a month or 2 or 3, and then we punched out and went over across the pond. So
hold on. So you show up to Ranger Battalion, and they're like, "Get ready, in 30 days, we're going to Afghanistan."
I don't know what the timeline was. It could have been 1 month. It could have been 3 months. I don't remember when we punched out, but I know day one, pack for war. And that's, you always have kind of like they're rotating the Ranger battalions across. So right now, second bat's over, for instance. First bat's in the hole and third's on deck. And so third is now in kind of like a reposture, refit. They're going to go ahead and take leave and go see family and take a little vacation and knock out these items. We're going to make sure their teeth are fixed and they're medical, and they're going to do some training opportunities that you can't do when you're on deck, because at any moment you may be wheels up in 48 hours or 72 hours of like, hey, we're going. There's one time we went to war of like, we didn't know and we're just on alert, and any day you could have gone, and we lived that way for, a month or 3. And then all of a sudden it was the day, and you can't tell anyone. You remember how it was. Mm-hmm. You can't tell anyone you're leaving. You just disappear. And so you had to be ready. So I don't know what Ranger Battalion was like before war, because all I did was war with the Ranger Battalion. But much like the teams, we had areas of focus. So I'm like, all right, we're going to do a rotary wing operation. We're going to go down to, Texas and do such and such. And it's going to be the CQB hit with moving an urban terrain around. And then we're going to move after that, the dust is settled on that. We're going to go learn explosive breaching, and we bring in this person to do that. And now we're doing range workup, and now we're going to travel around and do some medical stuff. And then we're going to do some vehicle stuff. And then you just always being cross-trained so that you can be this renaissance man of lethality.
Okay.
So much the same that you guys are doing, of like, you got the fundamentals and basics. You're always shooting, and you're always working on movement and communication, all that jazz. And then you're, kind of using these con skills, these push-outs where you're getting specialized training in areas of focus. So
how is the team broken up, or the entire battalion?
Sure.
How is it broken up?
So battalion is separated into like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie company, and then you'll have a headquarters, or in that headquarters you may have like a recce element or your snipers and stuff. So it's kind of, that's the junk drawer of Rangers, but an Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie companies. And then within that you're going to have platoons, a first, second, and third platoon, and then you have like a headquarters platoon or a weapons platoon, fourth. And then of that, a platoon, which is 30-ish, 40-ish dudes, depending on how heavy. Right now, recruitment's so low, that may be like 8 dudes,
Yeah.
I have no idea. But 30, 40 dudes, guns attached or mortars or snipers, you're kind of flexing here and there, and just based on numbers. We got down real lean, after we're around year of 2005, they used special operations so much in the war. We all just got burnt out, and people just started ETSing or punched out of like, this is too much. Just constantly going back and forth, and just wore you out. And it's not like we're guarding gates. We're hunting bad guys. We may run 2 or 3 different missions in a night. I remember in Afghanistan, on one particular deployment, I slept in a different geographical location in that country every single night for a month. Because we're just traveling at the speed of Humint, SIGINT, and we're punching around just wherever, hey, somebody made a phone call up here. We think we're, it's the Jack of Clubs, and we're going to go up and try to find that dude. And so, for example, and so we're just traveling at the speed of intelligence all over the place, and just wear you out after a while. And so we'd got down to a real lean, and then other times you get pretty fat. But then a platoon's broken up into 4 squads, first, second, third, and a weapons squad.
Okay.
And then a squad is broken up into teams, and that's 3 or 4 dudes.
Okay. So when you guys deploy, when second bat deploys, do you all deploy together as one, or is Alpha Bravo Charlie going to different locations, different countries?
The typical plan is a battalion would deploy all together.
Okay.
That did not always happen.
Okay.
But that's the general idea.
Okay. What about, how is the team kind of broken up into, is it different expertises? Like, do you have breachers, snipers, communications guys, or does everybody do everybody's job?
The general idea is to have as much cross-training as humanly possible. So we're not going to be nearly as specified as something like a group guy, where they'll get real into the weeds, but you'll do certain con skills. And so Jason here is going to be like our master breacher, and he's been to the schools, and we're all pretty good at breaching. I loved blowing doors, and so I had this leg bag I always carried. Leg bags are dorky, but when it's filled with a bunch of det cord, it's pretty cool. So I had the leg bag whenever we were running around clearing cities, because I'm like, yeah, let's blow some doors open. And so I kicked open a lot of doors. I blew open a lot of doors, but and so all of us knew how to blow open doors, of course. But when there was something spicy of we want a shape charge, hey, we got a safe, and Jason's like, I got it. He's the guy who's gonna be able to do that. In the absence of a medic, one of us is going to be pretty darn schooled up. I took the medical con skill, so I went and got my EMT certificate. And I went through EMT school so that I was pretty good at the medical stuff. I liked doing the medical stuff. Now, that wasn't my job. I dorked out on that. And so we were all generally cross-trained, but in all the necessary areas, you wanted within your squad somebody who really rocked at that.
Okay.
You need somebody who is not just good at land nav. They're a savant. All of us can land nav. Anybody can. Most of us, especially a tab spec 4 or a sergeant, you can pick up and do good land nav. But you got Blaine, he's the dude. You want him on point. He's going to rock it, and so we have some specificity within, but everyone's pretty cross-trained.
So what's the culture for a new guy showing up? I mean, you kind of went through it a little bit. You definitely got
terrible
hazed. What happens? I mean, when do you start to get accepted and people quit messing with you? And it's like, hey, John's going to be here. John's solid. Lay off him. He's part of us now. At what point, what does it take to prove yourself within Ranger Battalion?
Everything's become so sissified in culture and in the military. I have no idea of
Not now,
anything. Yeah,
then.
But back then, man, you show up and your life is going to be real bad because they don't care that you've been through RIP or whatever. They'll look down on the stuff of no, you know nothing, and now you start. Now it starts. So it's like, oh, well, he's been to RIP, so he must be good. Nope, they're going to see for themselves. And you want to know whether, hey, is this guy really got my 6? Can I really count on this dude? Is this a quitter? What's his character like? What's his attitude like? Do I want to be around this guy? And so all elements of the person come together. It's not just how good of a shooter you are, of do you fit within this culture? Can I count on you? Are you tough? Are you an idiot? What am I dealing with here? And so everything is a test, and it's going to be real painful. Mental, physical games until you prove yourself. Now, once you get back from Ranger School and you got a tab, now it's a completely different culture shift. Okay. Now it's kind of like, you're right. You're not getting dropped for push-ups, unless you did something really jacked up. And if you did something really jacked up, you're going to be given the respect of, you'll be pulled into a room, typically if you got good leadership, and you'll be privately reprimanded. Privates will be publicly reprimanded and shamed, and anything depends on the leadership. I led differently than those who led me initially. I I was on an entirely different leadership journey where I kept some stuff and then incorporated my own leadership strategies as well, which I found better in some ways. So, yeah.
You know, we came into the military at basically the same time period. And so, you know, I don't know a lot of the history of the Rangers, but we came in, when me and you came in 2001 time frame, you know, pre 9/11, there was a long stretch, or maybe just with a few things where men could have gotten combat experience.
Right.
For Rangers, I know Somalia was a big one, obviously, and you know, I guess maybe a little bit, maybe in Desert Storm.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a lot. There was a long time period from Vietnam to 9/11, 2001, when it was really peacetime.
Right.
So I was a little hesitant to ask you, you know, what was the turning point, because you kind of mentioned you had been rushed. It was almost a rush to get you out the door to war.
Yeah.
So what was that? Did that create any kind of animosity from a guy, let's say a guy that's been in Ranger Bat for 15 years, and it was all training and peacetime? And now you have John Lovell, who joins in 2001 and is going to war his first year at Ranger Bat. You know, did that create a lot of animosity within the community, because you have junior Rangers who now have more experience and had seen more, done it for real, than guys that have been in 10, 15, 20 years?
I don't know, because I wouldn't have been fraternizing with those dudes who were fuller up. Now, guys who are like, all right, you got your squad and your low man on totem pole, and you got your Spec 4s, and you got your team leaders, and you got squad leader, platoon sergeant. I don't think at that level, at the platoon level, you're going to have a lot of that, because they need you to be awesome. You know, and so we were ready to gear up to be a dangerous, well-oiled, functioning machine. And, you know, I don't think they were looking down on that bolt with condemnation, knowing you need that bolt to stay in place for that engine to run well.
Yeah.
So I didn't get that sense, but I was in such dire straits of just scary war. I am undertrained. I am trying to, you know, stay alive. There's lots of kind of hazing amidst this. There's the power curve is so immense. The sociological, you know, grudges that high ranks would have toward me, I would be oblivious of.
Interesting. Well, hey, let's take a break, and then when we come back, we'll pick up with your first deployment, what that brief was like, what you felt.
Sounds good.
Cool. Next on the Shawn Ryan Show.
I was kicking open some palace doors, kick, and then the door flings open. And immediately coming through the fatal funnel, the doorway, we took incoming fire, screaming right past me. I was a saw gunner at the time. I came up and I shot him in the face and just dropped him. I'd never killed someone that close.
My first real mission, was in Haiti, and we didn't really see much. At the time, it was the biggest deal that I had ever encountered. Yeah. How did you kind of mentally prepare? Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes, so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.